for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a second. We're going to give everybody a minute to kind of get settled in and things along those lines. So excited about the content, the speakers that we have today. The event's going to be a great event, and hoping everybody walks out of this with a tidbit of knowledge that they can apply to their AI journey. And again, as we mentioned, this is about how enterprises are scaling agentic AI for measurable impact. So real life use cases, scenarios, points of view, topics, and everything in between. All right. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, thank you everyone for attending, from everyone at CompuSoft Digital. Just wanted to thank everyone for their time. We know time is time, and there's not a lot of it in today's world. So we want to make sure that, we give you the most out of the time that you're investing. So really appreciate everyone spending time with us today. Now, I'm not going to go through the slide, but on the right-hand side, the way that we're going to do this is a fireside chat. So we're going to talk about specific points of view backed up by industry data. And again, we'll go through the speaker announcements in just a second. We do have a good point of view from various personas on the call today. And introducing the speakers, very, very excited about the speakers we have. I do highly recommend that everyone go to LinkedIn, connect with Hatan, Pooja, Jen, and John. Great connection. They're always pushing out thought leadership and content. So highly recommend that you make a connection with them. So our first presenter today is Hatan with Henry Ford Health. And I've had the opportunity to work with Hatan over the years and seen him do some just incredible things around innovation. Not only at Henry Ford Health, but previously he worked at Mayo Clinic, to where he led their contact center and patient experience, Ford and GM as well. And again, just the innovation that he brings to the table, the thought leadership. Hatan, thank you for joining us today. Very, very pleased to have you on the call. So welcome. And then, Pooja is always just, our partner in crime, who is just, innovating around all things agentic AI. When you look at the speed of which, Pooja and her team is releasing this innovation, it's second to none. And I've never been this excited about technology. I mean, this, been boring over the last 10 years, but now with AI and the new wave coming down, it's exciting again. And Pooja's at the front end of that. And Pooja's had the opportunity to work at SAP, IBM, HCL, and obviously leads the charge, head of product and AI intelligent apps over at Microsoft. So Pooja, thanks for joining us again. Very much appreciate your time. And then Jen, with Stewart Title, Stewart Title has grown very quickly over the years through M&A activities, and she's at the center of all the noise, right? People have AI ideas, they have big thoughts and structures, and Jen is trying, looks to apply those strategies into production. And, Jen has worked at Chevron in the past, a lot of energy experience, Duke Energy, Stewart Title, obviously, a title company, fast growing, one of the leaders in the market as well. And Jen's job is to bridge those islands of AI wishes and turn them into dreams, right? So glad to have you on the call as well, Jen. You're going to give a great perspective on the panel. And then last but not least, John Rostia, who I've had the pleasure of working with for years, has been in the professional services space, has also been a CIO in a previous life, helps companies digitally transform. So he works very closely with the product teams over at Microsoft and is the bridge between product and deployment and outcome, and enjoys every minute of it. So John, always great to have you on these and looking forward to hearing your perspective. Good. So again, thank you, panelists, for taking time out of your schedule. We got some heavy hitters today, so get the chat bot working, the Word document, or if you're old school and have a pen and a piece of paper, get ready to use it, because there's going to be some great nuggets that we're going to be able to pull out of this discussion today. So just as a reminder, we do look at references for each of our point of view, industry, KPIs, and things along those lines. We just want to make sure that we're bringing factual information. And the reality is that there is a lot of noise out there today. So the first topic is what everybody's dealing with. I mean, people are throwing bright, shiny objects at us daily. And we're trying to figure out, how do we apply those to business from an AI perspective? So, what we're going to do is a round robin with the panelists, but this is the typical AI journey that companies are going through. And I call it an emotional roller coaster. It's peaks and valleys, and you have wins and losses, but there are ways to stabilize. I mean, when you look at the front end, this is when the CEO is pushing something down to you, or business group, and then you hear about all the fodder out there, and each of the analysts, they have different points of view. So it's pretty interesting when you look at that information collated, and then how do you make sense of it? And then you get down to the trough of disillusionment, and that's what everybody goes through when you don't get the results. And it all comes down to, if you look at the green boxes on the right-hand side, people jump into it, but then they focus on the important things after they failed. And it's okay to fail fast, but you got to think about the governance, you got to think about the security, you got to think about the business requirements, and you got to understand the cost. And that's how you get to those measurable impacts. But let's move away from the analyst. Now let's hear real time. So the first question is going to go to you, Jen, with all the different business units that Stuart, that you have, and all of the requests and requirements. How do you gain organizational alignment consensus to support AI initiatives? I mean, what are some of the trials and tribulations that you go through, and what are some of the best practices that you found to address those? So I'll be quiet and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Greg. First, the noise is absolutely real, right? And I think that it is the biggest casualty when it comes to the internal credibility of AI. So executives who have been promised over and over again on transformation, but have not seen it, our jobs as AI leaders is not just to build the right thing, it's to rebuild trust while you're building this solution. So what's worked for us here at Stewart Title has been to be extremely specific and fast. And you have to balance that out, right? But I'm going to explain a little bit more on that. It's not just saying that, hey, we're going to transform something such as a document processing, for example, with AI, but we're going to replace a very specific legacy system. We're going to first target a very specific state. We're going to do this by a specific date. And here is what the end user is going to see differently from day one. So when you are this specific, that is what cuts the noise internally and externally. I'm going to hit real quickly on the governance piece here as well, because that matters extremely critically. My team and I have been fortunate enough to spend a good amount of times building the formal AI governance framework here at Stewart. And before we started building anything, and again, it's very critical to remember that this is not to slow things down, because without it, every skeptic that is in the room now has a legitimate objection, right? So you have to show your leadership a very real framework, data ownership, vendor controls, a rollback plan. In case this new system fails, what are you going to do without everything getting shut down? And then you stop having those permission conversations and you start actually having the executive conversations of being able to deliver.
Yeah, that's great. And it's always going to come up, right? So organizational alignment, consensus is key. And Hatan, I mean, you've worked at some very big hospital systems like Henry Ford Health over the years. I mean, highly regulated, right? Dealing with patients. So, I mean, it's not easy to get organizational alignment in that type of industry. But what have you seen, and what are some of the things and best practices that you would recommend to the group? Love to hear your kind of point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as Jen said, the AI noise is real, right? Like, as contact center leaders, we're all feeling the pressure, especially from our CFOs, right? As a cost center, so to speak, in the organization, we're always asked to where can we save a FTE, or what can we do to help to automate processes to reduce the burden that we have. So really, it's around moving fast, but if we don't fix the issues that are systemic, we're just going to automate all that inefficiency, right? So taking bad processes and really just moving them forward. And this isn't new, right? AI is a new tool, but it isn't new for any of us, especially those of us that live in the contact center space, where we see innovation and technology coming all the time. Even if we think about 10, 15 years ago, when we were talking about IVRs and natural language processing, and it was the same kind of conversation, right? Like, how do we take the routine, I'm pushing 1, 2, 3, 4, and now automate that, right? It's tuning the systems. As a reformed engineer myself, I spend a lot of time tuning systems, tuning those devices, and that's what we're talking about now with AI, right? So as we talk about alignment and how do we move forward in the organization, it's a lot of we're doing very similar to what Jen described, right? We have a group within the organization that's taking the charge and bringing stakeholders to the table, from our physician leadership, our clinical partners, operations, IT, security, as well as some of our C-suite leaders, and really just having a conversation around, what's important for the organization, especially as you said, Greg, we're in a very regulated part of the industry, and really just thinking about that, which then goes back to the alignment to really put the patient in the center of everything that we're doing. So really rallying around what is best for the patient and how do we automate the processes that are going to make our patients feel valued and feel like they're efficient in the care that we're delivering to them, and make our teams feel that way as well. So it's really getting all the stakeholders to the table, having them buy into what we're trying to accomplish, and helping to reduce that friction so that we're not just cutting costs, but we're improving the outcomes when it comes down to it.
Yeah, it's all about the outcomes. I mean, spot on from that standpoint. Let's not do technology, just do technology. Let's look for the inherent business processes and outcomes to optimize, which speaks to Pooja. I can only imagine, like, every day somebody has a new AI agent that they want you to push out. I mean, how do you deal with that internally over at Microsoft? And I'm curious on that question. I can only imagine, how many times you get requests.
Yeah, you're right. The biggest mistake any organizations are making is that they're thinking about it from a technology standpoint. And just like you said, technology for the sake of technology. When we talk to organizations, a lot of them come and say, like, we want to do AI. Like, where do I start? And if you look at your chart as well, the noise is coming from thinking about it from a tech standpoint. Every day there is a new model, new framework, or a new AI announcement. If leadership chase technology, alignment becomes impossible. And that's what is creating noise. The organizations should start from the process. And like Jen and Hakan's talking about, think about 3 questions. What are the business problems that you're solving? How will you measure the success? And who owns the outcome? And the third one is extremely important, because then you're bringing people along, and you creating responsibility of people who own the outcome. Once you align around measurable outcome, whether it's reduce cycle time, improving the customer satisfaction, or whatever it may be, AI adoption becomes much easier. The conversation becomes much easier. And the second piece that a lot of time comes in afterthought when you're starting to implement AI is around what Jen also touched upon, is about legal, security, and governance. You need to bring these leaders, whether it's IT, security, legal operations, involved early. They need to be part of the problem that you're solving. It shouldn't be that, hey, we are implementing AI, and now let's see what do we need to do to enable some of these authorizations. It should be, here is the problem that we're trying to solve. This is where technology can help. it is not a technology initiative, it's an organizational transformation initiative. The companies that are winning, they aren't necessarily winning by adopting AI faster. They are aligning faster. And they are thinking about it as a business problem, not a tech that they need to implement. And that's where I see maximum noise is coming from.
Yeah, I love the three-step process: business problem, measure success, and then who owns it, right? From a persona perspective. Yeah. Words of wisdom as always, Pooja. Love it. John, how are you helping customers wade through this noise? I mean, you're getting thrown into the fire, the bridge between software publisher and client. What are you seeing out there, and what are some of the tips and tricks that you recommend?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, and really agree with everyone here. The conversation around AI should never start with technology. It should begin with a clear strategic objective. So if you want real organization alignment, you have to connect your AI investments directly to what really matters to the business. Like Hatan was really saying, I mean, you can hyper personalize certain patient care or customers and what they're looking for, and that's whether your goal is driving operational excellence, deepening customer relationships, accelerating innovation, or making better decisions faster. People need to see how AI serves the bigger strategy. When leadership teams rally around outcomes instead of shiny new tools, the quality of decisions improves that dramatically. But we also have to be honest, where we are all at. The market is full of bold promises and hype. But the organizations that succeed don't usually, do it through one massive breakthrough project. They succeed through disciplined execution, strong governance, solid data foundations, and a commitment to, what continuously learning looks like. And as those new tools evolve, how does that all come together? One of the most common mistakes I see is treating AI like a destination, as if the goal was simply to deploy AI. The better question is, what competitor advantages are we trying to create? And how can AI help us get there faster?
Yeah. It's all about accuracy and speed at the end of the day. And Hatan, just kind of with the same kind of talk track. I mean, what are some of the things that you've seen coming down over the years, and how have you been able to set expectations personally, when those requirements come in? What do you do from that standpoint? Any tips and tricks?
Yeah, I think, when you talk about like deployment of technology or processes, it's really around where we talked a lot about leadership buy-in. It's also buy-in from your team, right? Getting conversations and getting your team engaged early in that process, so people understand that a new process or a new piece of technology is not taking away from me or what I'm doing, but it's helping me do my job better and helping me to enhance the work that I'm providing, that really care, that customer care that I'm providing, and every single interaction, and how it's helping me to get to that point. Be it, agent assist tools or even bots, right? Those things are things that allow us to do our job better, easier, and help with that end result workflow, which is customer experience in our case.
That's great. Jen, leadership and team alignment, what have you done to help foster that, within Stewart? You're on mute. The mute button. Oh. Gets me all the time too, Jen.
Oh, no, you're good. Thanks. Thank you, Greg. So when it comes to leadership alignment, I think it's been super critical for us to be able to, again, ensure that we are, everything that we have has a very measurable impact that is tied to what we are building, right? And just to even talk a little bit about the fact that it's very easy for us to be able to say, hey, we're going to automate something because because there's so much to automate, right? And it's a first instinct. But then really trying to identify what are the things that are that is automating a good process versus a broken process, right? And I think those are some of the things that it's easy to really then be able to get that leadership alignment and buy-in when you are actually showing them very tangible steps that you want to take and what the outcomes are going to be.
Yeah. I mean, use cases that are smart, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound helps bridge those islands of dysfunction into one organized kind of team. So no, I love it. That makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. So good. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. We're doing good on time. And this one, we heard a lot about to process or not to process. I think that's the question, right? How do we overlay AI on top of that? Just food for thought. When you look at McKinsey, it's interesting when you look at current state processes that we can do today compared to where we're going in, by 2030. And then how do you start with that process? How do you make sure that that process can be supported by AI? It's not noisy. And then how do you move that process forward? So the next discussion, next topic is Hatan, you're going to kick this one off. But how should you take your existing processes or redefine and optimize, restart with AI and Copilot? What are some of the lessons learned, and how do you go about this at Henry Ford and previously?
Yeah, I think this goes back to a lot of the conversation we were just having a few minutes ago, right? It's really about, how do you take, in most cases, what we're doing is we're scaling. If you think about an assembly line, we're just really scaling that assembly line to go faster without really thinking about what is going to be that outcome at the end, right? Like we can't have, coming from the automotive industry, a bunch of cars at the end that don't have doors on them, right? So how do we scale our processes and look at our process steps along the way and making sure that we're helping to create an environment that reduces that frustration point for our end customers, patients, and our employees both, right? So we really have to fix the basics in the contact center world, right? Really thinking about our handoffs, our routing, our workflows, our clarity. What are patients calling us for? What are employees frustrated with in knowledge management tools or in workflow steps? And really thinking about all of those different steps in the equation, and then starting to look at, okay, where can we look to automate AI and put in AI that drives that value so that it doesn't continue to create a foundation that's broken or that assembly line that continues to flow and creates waste at the end, but really creates an opportunity where we can build all those things together and have an environment that creates value for everyone involved in the process. We can't build on broken AI, right? Or building foundations. We really have to build on processes that will improve outcomes. And as we get into this next phase, and I'm sure all of us are starting to hear AI for AI, right? And I love Pooja's perspective on this maybe in a few minutes as well. Just like, we set up AI up until now, it's always been with a human. Now we're talking about AI talking to AI, right? And how do we leverage that and start looking at those types of things, and how do we deliver value on that, right? And I think that's where it's going to get fun and really complicated at the same time as we think about those things.
Hey, what do you do when you see a process that's not, some resonate when you made the comment is we can make a bad process go faster. It's not going to get the outcomes you want. What do you do when you see a bad process or something that could be optimized? How do you slow that down internally to get everybody aligned?
Yeah, really for us, it's pulling the right people together in a team and breaking down that process step by step. So we like to take the approach of, really doing a full review and look back at the process, identifying opportunities along the way where, if you think about it like the Swiss cheese model, where were there holes in the process that led to poor outcomes? Right? And how do we fill that Swiss cheese or the holes in those processes that lead to better outcomes? And that's what we like to do. And put the pieces together and the right people at the table to have those types of conversations.
Nice. Great insight. Pooja, what are your thoughts on the process question? To process or not to process? And maybe open up with the question you asked me the other day. But over to you. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. Pooja, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I would like to challenge it a little bit, and going back to what we were talking the other day as well. Should you really take an existing process and see what you can do with AI, or should you step back and think about it differently? I'm thinking about the right analogy that we can make. Right now, we're super excited about what AI can do, and we're kind of thinking about it as we were able to make horse carriages much more faster than what we were able to do it. But do we need horse carriages or not? That's how we need to think about. Technology is creating new processes. It's enabling new processes. Many of the enterprise processes today or in past were designed around human limitations. For example, a lot of organizations never did the research for their customers before pitching a product. I was talking to one of our sellers the other day, and he was like, I was talking to our customers, and we were understanding their need, and I hit the recording. Post-recording, I used CoWork to said, analyze customer need, look at the product that we have, pitched the right product, create a solution, and give me a deck. And within minutes, it created a deck which pitched the right product to the customer, which would have taken us probably weeks or months to do that. And sometimes it was more about, hey, this is what we have, and not a full understanding of what you need. So was there a process like that before that we're transforming? Or are we saying, let's look at what AI can do. Let's not limit ourselves with the processes which were designed around human limitation, and change the assumption of what was possible and look at the art of possibility. Before automating a process, you should ask, if AI existed when this process was originally designed, would I build it the way it is built today? Or should I do things differently? And that, having that question is important. Then you'll stop thinking about, do I automate my process and how can I do this faster and build these horse carriages faster, to, do I need a horse carriage anymore? Can we do it very differently?
Yeah. I take unleaded in my horse carriage, which I don't need anymore to that point. But no, yeah, great analogy. And Jen, you have so much data, B2C, B2B, transactional, high data volumes, all the processes or preemptive sequential events, right? Triggering. I mean, how do you handle this internally? What are some of the best practices and recommendations that you have for the audience?
Yeah, so I think both Hitan and Pooja, you guys hit on some great things, for are you making something better, right? Versus just doing it for the sake of either building it or making something faster just because it's been done that way. So for this, I think I'll share an example that could be hopefully beneficial to others that are looking at similar scenarios in their industry or in their organizations. Are, as you can imagine, in the insurance space, we are a document-heavy industry, right? That means there is a lot of extraction that's involved. We have, for years, relied on OCR systems, but these are, remember, very legacy systems, and which means that now you're talking about 60 to 70% accuracy. And then what happens to the rest of that data? Somebody needs to actually review it and make sure that it has been extracted correctly or fix things. Now, it was very fascinating. As we solved this problem, we realized the hidden costs that the company has been paying for decades and decades because of the manual human element solving it. We're not even considering those costs, right? And this is, and it's majority of that information that's being solved. And nobody's questioned it because it's just part of the process. So today, as we built an AI-powered extraction, we didn't just improve automation. Now we eliminated this entire correction tax that has cost the organization thousands and thousands of dollars, right? And this way, before we have, so the reframe that I would offer to this audience is before you're optimizing a process with AI, ask what manual work exists because your current automation is broken, right? And that's often where that real ROI is hiding. And we've made very deliberate decisions today to make sure that our end user, so in many cases, our title examiners, for example, their workflow is completely unchanged. And the AI really plugs in underneath. And this is super critical, especially for our industry, right? You're getting the same inputs, you're getting the same output, so that the information that's extracted at the end is going to be in the same format, and you're just getting better data. And that's where you don't have to fight that change management war, and you're going to get adoption much faster.
Yeah, I love how you put the human equation. I mean, a loaded FTE cost can be anywhere from 80 to 160 bucks an hour, right? So when you multiply that times hours spent correcting OCR, I mean, it's a pretty definitive value proposition on OpEx reduction. So I love how you kind of tied people, process, automation all into one outcome. John, you're getting pulled into all kinds of processes and all kinds of wish lists, and I can imagine where you're going to go with this response. But what are you seeing, and how are you addressing this when you're asked during deployments or sales cycles?
Yeah, and then thanks, Greg. And not to sound like a broken record here, but to follow these panelists, I'm last and the second one here. This is going to sound like a little bit of a broken record. I'm going to try to recapitulate a lot of what was said out there, because I really agree with it, because we see it a lot. And one of the most overlooked aspects of success is understanding that AI itself is dependent on the maturity of the underlying business process that it's intended to enhance. I think we heard that across from the product and a lot of the other panelists that were saying that before. I mean, organizations often view AI to fix their inefficiencies, but AI tends to amplify those existing processes that we just heard from everybody, both the good and the bad. If a process is poorly defined, inconsistency executed, or lacks measurable outcomes, introducing AI will just simply accelerate those efficiencies rather than create them. This is why we've got process optimization built in and best practices. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, so when looking at that, we wanted to take a lot of those by applying AI to real life business use cases. Simply start simple. Organizations should examine both their what are their key workloads, identify their bottlenecks, establish clear ownership, and then standardize a lot of these data inputs and define what are going to be some of our success metrics as we kind of have those things defined up front. That'll help us, AI perform best when it operates well within maintained, governable, like you said, repeatable processes supported by quality data. Clients that we've been talking to are starting to think of AI as the next layer of operational excellence. They're learning, about their methodologies and getting the process automation with data governance and continuous improvement disciplines just remain just as important, if not more important, in an AI-enabled, enterprise. Companies that are realizing the greatest returns from AI are not necessarily those investing in the most technology. They're the ones that have invested in process discipline and organizational readiness. And I think I've heard this across all the other panelists. The stronger the operational foundation, the greater the value AI can deliver. Those organizations that focus on optimizing their process first and applying AI second are far more likely to achieve sustainable, scalable outcomes.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Pooja, curious, going to call an audible real quick. What's your favorite process agent and why?
That's a tough one. There are so many things that I like. I've created a chief of staff for myself. I created an agent who understands who I am, what am I trying to do, and it helps me prioritize my work. It gives me a summary of what I need to do today. Looks at last 24 hours, what did I receive? Summary of what's happening with the key customers that I'm tracking, and that's helping me optimize my work. And this with the help of this, I'm able to focus on things that I want to achieve in my career and not just do the work that comes on my table. So I think that's helping me transform my career, and I probably love that most.
Yeah, I need to check that agent out. Sounds like a cool one for sure. Hatan, regulatory constraints around data, PHI, all that fun stuff. How are you handling that? How are you addressing PHI in the process, agentic AI discussions internally?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear what Jen said around some of the tools that they've deployed, because I think that's the space that we're really looking at, and how do we take, we're still in healthcare, so faxes still exist, and we just took a large service line into the contact center that has a high volume of faxes that come into them. And what we've done is we've deployed, I would say, a partial AI model where we've tagged all of our records that are coming in, so we know at least what those faxes are for. But what we're finding is the real need is around really taking exactly what you said, Greg, matching the handwritten name and date of birth to what we have in our EHR, right? And that's not an easy process. Right now, it takes a lot of manpower and a lot of human intervention to say, okay, was that an A that the doctor wrote, or was that an E, or was that an F, right? Like, so really taking all of that and going with our traditional, what we used to do is that exactly the same as what Jen said, OCR, right? Taking that, being able to read that. Now our next evolution is taking our AI and having it learn all those nuances to handwriting, and then being able to take that and transcribe that into our EHR.
Could you imagine if we had a agent 10 years ago that could take a physician's handwriting and normalize it so you could read it? I mean, revolutionary,
amazing.
right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. John, anything to elaborate on? What's one of your favorite processes that you've automated recently through AI?
Yeah, I think one of the ones, and I worked very closely with Pooja and this team, and this is just something near and dear to something that I was controlling and in charge of, and that's just being able to automate the process where leads are generated through our CRM system, and those agents are constantly reaching out based upon the subject and topic and products and what they're requesting. So an agent really, looks at that information and, quickly identifies, ways to communicate to them and just doesn't bombard them. It was amazing to me that how the AI agent was able to adapt and reach out to them based upon, replies back and forth. And then looking at the replies that the customer was getting from that lead, it had no idea that it was talking to an agent just based upon questions that they were supplying. That was all automated in the back end just by supplying it some of the data pieces that we did. I thought that was just something that was just really needed in the CRM world. So it was great.
Yeah, no, that was huge from that standpoint. So Jen, second favorite use case to close us out on this topic. What else are you? What else is going in the back of your mind as far as use cases that you could apply?
Yeah. So obviously this one, is a really good piece, but another use case that I think is really an important one is just a simple where we've leveraged something like a co-pilot agent to be able to knowledge information, right? To be able to input knowledge sources and then be able to extract some good quality information and be able to get it to the whether it is we've got in this business, we've got so many different segments that we touch, right? We've got the banking aspect, we've got the end user, the title agents, and each one, there's so many different sets of processes that the end user has to follow. So for them to be able to get and extract this knowledge as quickly as possible to answer those questions to the end user is one of the use cases that honestly is a very easy implementation, and it's got a very high ROI in our industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. The simple ones do have significant impacts. You look at like dispositioning in a call center, contact center. I mean, if it takes 30 seconds and you have 200,000 interactions per year, quarter, month, whatever, I mean, those add up, right? Those 30 seconds times an ABR of $60 an hour, so the easy ones definitely do show inherent benefits as well. So great stuff. Yeah, I love the talk track on this one. And then real quick, just as a reminder, we do have the chat open. So if anyone wants to ask a question via chat, you can do it, and we'll try to get to it real time or at the end of the session. So we kind of talked about noise, right? How do we manage and control the noise from that standpoint? We talked about processes. Everything starts with the user story, and then it gets blocked in legal, governance, compliance. That's why you got to bring them in early. Now, how do you justify, the user adoption, the ROI from that standpoint? And kind of looking at a Forrester enterprise operating model, I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, but these are some of the blockers that we're seeing, right, to get to the AI adoption, and those types of things. So, how are you tying user adoption? How are you tracking ROI? What are some of the best practices? I mean, Hatan, you talked about rallying the team so that everybody's aware on why we're doing this, what's going on, those types of things. So for this question, Pooja, you're going to kick this one off. How do you gain user adoption, define user benefits, and see return on investments during your AI journey? What are customers telling you, how they're addressing it? What are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, this is a great point and very well connected to the first thing that we were talking about around the noise. So I'll go back to what we were discussing at that point of time. Start with business outcome. Bring people impacted as part of the decision making and help them understand the impact AI will bring. And that's where you will define the ROI. Don't start with what AI can do. Start with what frustration you're feeling every day. And I'm seeing the organization, that's how they are starting, are making a huge difference. And in fact, they're helping us improve our products also. I'll give you an example. I was talking to one of the customers and they were like, our biggest problem is nobody is able to record the data well, and we don't have insights, we don't have notes from the discussions which are happening, and capturing that notes is very important. And our sellers spend Friday, they are able to remember whatever they could and then enter that. So, now we're talking starting from the problem. When we're starting from the problem, it's easy to define what is the ROI that we're looking at. What do you want to, so there is a frustration that you're not able to collect the data, you're not able to add notes on time, you're missing information, and what does that cause? And when you start with asking those questions around frustration, you will be able to define your ROI very clearly in terms of what is the impact that you want. And then you ask, now since I have AI, what can AI do? And stretch it a bit. Like if I take the same example, it's like I need the notes to be recorded, I need information to be captured so that I can provide the right solution to our customers. So that's what you're trying to achieve. You want to increase your revenue, close more deals by providing the right solution. Okay, now you got the problem. What AI can do? AI can help me record these faster, where maybe I can use AI to summarize my meeting and then I can review that and record it. Yes, it can. Stretch it further. And see what more can it do. Can it auto update records? Can it auto capture and do things? I don't have to do anything here. So keep stretching and think, now AI is there. What more can it do? So based on my experience, here are the lessons that I've learned that first and foremost, your executive sponsorship matter, bring your exec in place. Bring people who will be the part of this, who are responsible to create that impact as part of this. Have those as your champions. When people trust their peers, when some people are successful with AI, they will spread the word and they will bring the adoption. And last but not the least is train, help them understand how the transformation bring. We at Microsoft itself, all of us are using AI a lot more in our day-to-day work. And there are tons of trainings which are going on to answer questions, to help us understand what can be done, how do you start? And those are the three key things that you need to be able to define the ROI. ROI will grow once the adoption comes. So track your adoption, make sure people are using it, and then you will get your ROI will start flowing in.
Yeah, we are AI, detectives at the end of the day, chasing the elusive, adoption and ROI. Hatan, how have you kind of managed this? You talked about it kind of early on, but maybe you can just elaborate on a couple areas that have worked well for you. And your leadership style is all about pulling the people in, right? To get consensus. I've seen it in action, but for the audience, maybe just a couple recommendations that you've done over the years.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? If people don't use it, the value never scales, right? So, getting people to buy in and having people understand what the value is for them. So, I'll give you another example. Living this firsthand, we implemented a agent assist AI in a previous contact center I worked at, and it completely backfired, right? We captured requirements for what we thought was going to work. We had conversations with end users. We talked to the product team. We thought we had this greatest solution in place. We put it in, got the agents to start using it, and talk time went up. Our scheduling success went down, right? The usage of the tool was not even there. And really what ended up happening is when we dug into the data and we started to look at the data and we started to use the technology, it was because the agents didn't trust what was put in, right? And even though we had brought people into the conversation, what we didn't do is we didn't ask them, how is this going to make you feel, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, let's deploy a process, let's do all these things, but let's talk about you as a human and how is this going to make you feel when another tool is going to help you to do your work that you have all these years of training to do, and we've trained you in all these years, but now this tool is going to be able to get that information for you right away as you're talking to the customer. And once we step back and we started to have these conversations with the front line and we tuned that AI a little bit more to what their pain points were and the journey of talking to the patient, we were able to get that agent assist tool to a point where agents started to feel comfortable with using the tool, and it was bringing them along for their process so that they started to use the tool as it was coming up in the process. So if someone is saying, well, I have dogs, the tool is going right to the pet section and making sure that the agent is talking about, can you put your pets away when the provider is coming to your home, right? Many of those types of things. And that was then got the adoption from the agents. And what we saw is that once they started to use the tool, we started to see ROI come out of that because all of our metrics started to improve, right? Our number of cases we scheduled went up, our adoption went up. And at the bottom, and at the end of the day, revenue went up from all of that, right? So it really, AI doesn't drive adoption. It's that relevance and how people feel about the tool that will help us to drive that value.
And how leaders make them feel about the tool to drive that value. I mean, the empathy, the caring, the listening, the culture, definitely commend you on that. I've seen it in action. So yeah, good stuff, Hatan. John, what say you on user adoption? You live this all the time. You do a lot of workshops around, governance, those types of things. What are you seeing?
Yeah, and talking with our customers, Greg, we start with, process clarity before automation. If a process cannot be clearly explained, measured, or repeated, it's not ready for AI. Second, invest early in your data discipline. AI performance is directly tied to data quality, consistency, and accessibility. Strong data governance, well-defined ownership, and standardized definitions are prerequisites, not afterthoughts. Another third way is adopting an incremental approach. Do not attempt, an end-to-end AI transformation, on day one. They begin, with narrow, high, impact use cases that prove out value and scale based upon those measurable outcomes. And Hatan, just to kind of like what you were just saying right there, one of the biggest pieces here, embedded human in the loop controls. In most enterprise environments, we're seeing AI should augment decision making, not fully replace it, right? Especially in regulated, customer facing, or high risk processes. So I really agree with Hatan. It's just, getting those pieces, making it hyper, personalized, but getting the human in the loop is, should not be, a part of that. Write it in there. Actually, put the people in the loop there. And finally, one of the biggest pieces, as I was thinking about this, is change management is, just absolutely underestimated. Even well-performing AI systems fail to deliver those ROI if users do not adopt them, or if workflows are not redesigned around them. So again, just to kind of encapsulate, making sure we get everybody's feedback, put change management in there constantly as we start to evolve pieces to make that much more adoptable and scalable.
Yeah. And Jen, every time you talk about AI, you bring the energy, the passion, just seems like everybody gets excited around you when you start talking about it. How have you leveraged that internally to either measure, get the adoption, and to see the ROI? What are some tips and tricks that you deploy internally from that point of view?
Yeah, so I would share that if you can make sure that that end user workflow doesn't change at all, because you can always expand and add more, but that first initial rollout should be they don't see a new interface, they don't have to go through the training, they don't have to trust something unfamiliar. And again, the AI improvement is happening all underneath the surface, right? And they're just getting better data. And that is what excites. And this is a very, very intentional piece that we have done internally, because in an regulated high stakes environment, as John was saying that we are in, this is the fastest path that we've discovered to ROI. And as I said, expand later, right? Because if that first experience feels like any sort of a disruption, right, and it changes the way that they do things, now you've created an organizational, almost an antibody, right? That is very difficult to remove. And the other piece that I would add is the ROI framing matters, right? So we didn't, for a lot of the stuff that we've been doing internally, we didn't go to leadership and say, here's what AI can do, right? But we're saying, here's what this element, what's happening today, is costing us. And here is the baseline, the accuracy baseline. Here's what's going to change, right? And therefore, it is something that is measurable before and after. And those are very important pieces, right? That's what's going to get you the budget. That's what's going to get you past the pilot, and that executive support that is going to continue moving past those pilot phases.
Yeah, great point of view. And you're starting to hear the same thing over and over again, right? It's all about governance and COE. I know Jen, Hatan, Pooja, and John all brought that up. Understand the user story, the use cases, that helps understand where you could potentially get blocked, compliance, budget, other competing data projects, etc. Track the human agent, interaction, right? That way you have measurable results. And then fell fast, from that standpoint. When you do those types of things, then you can get those VBAs going and those ROIs. So real quick, we got about 5 minutes left. So what we're going to do is just do a round robin, quick hit, 30 seconds on data integration dependencies. Look, we all know that data is the the dependency that we have to kind of get across, regardless who you talk through it. So on this last one, John, start us off. I mean, it's the same story, right? People are neglecting, bringing data in early into these discussions and integrations. What should they do and why?
This brings up a great point, and we get to this, all the time. But instead of always running away from it, run towards it. And what I'm kind of saying that like that is, we've seen where we've put in, policies, procedures, training guides into AI to quickly learn. It's the results sometimes asking it questions isn't that it comes out with different answers or slight variations. There's issues with that data that it's pulling out. Well, guess what? That's a good indicator to go back into your data sources and go find out where you've got repetition, where some of that is kind of competing against itself. So don't just, run away from that. Go ahead, look at those sources. AI is a great way as we start to roll things out. It's going to identify those areas that it's, again, competing with itself. It's got duplicative data. If it's got bad data, that AI engine is looking at your data. So that's an opportunity to go fix those data sources before it gets released out. So again, don't always run away from it and think that you got to have it perfect. Let AI be, some of your coach into identifying that. It's going to tell you what your data, what data outcomes that you fed into it. So again, if it's not always the AI, take a look at some of your data sources. Don't run from that. Run to it.
Hey, healthcare has easy data sources, right? EHR and EMR systems. Don't you just push a button at a time and all the data comes in seamlessly? What's your point of view living in that healthcare world?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what John said. I think where AI is really awesome is right, like even 5 or 10 years ago, right? We were talking about enterprise data warehouses and getting all those data pieces together in one location. We don't have to do that anymore, right? Data can still live in their own different worlds. Now with AI, we can pull all that information together, right? And I think that's what's cool and allows us the opportunity to really leverage all the data in different sources, right? Because coming from a customer service perspective as an operator, right? The goal here is to really put that human back in the center of it, right? So that I can talk to you and have a conversation with you as a human and really have that 360-degree view that we've all wanted to get to. And that's been the utopia in this space for years and years and years that we've all lived it. Now we have the opportunity to do that with AI and all the data.
Yeah, exciting times. Jen, what's your point of view on this?
Yeah, so I would say that it's interesting. Just been working in this for a while. I've seen how everyone wants to talk about the model, right? Nobody's talking about the plumbing, and that is where a lot of the times the project dies. It's if organizations can build a middleware layer, right, between your core system and the AI vendor, and that's where a lot of times you are protecting your data, right, and how those data integrations are working, because vendors can change, models are going to get updated, new providers emerge, and therefore it is super important not to have that dependency on from one legacy to another, but to be able to flow it through your internal middleware system that you've built out.
Yeah, a lot of data running through your organization, transactional. So I'm sure you're living this. Pooja, why don't you kind of close us out on this topic in the event? Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that nobody's talking about fixing data and making it perfect, but we're talking about plumbing, bringing it together. I'll just close this by saying a lot of organizations delay AI because they believe they need to have perfect data quality. In reality, you need sufficient data quality, right governance, and integration to make sure that you're connecting the right sources. And start with it. AI will tell you where the data is wrong.
Yeah. Well, Again, great topics today. I want to thank all the participants that joined the webinar. Great organizations. Thank you very much. And a big shout out to these industry experts, these AI leaders leading the charge, dealing with us every single day, the noise, the processes, the governance, the technology, and succeeding, which is what we want to do. So Hatan, thank you. Be sure to connect with this group. Pooja, thank you very much as well. Jen, John, this has been a great panel. As a reminder, we will be sending out the recording and a copy of the presentation along with supporting blogs. So on behalf of CompuSoft Digital, Henry Ford Health, Microsoft, Stuart Title, we wanted to thank everyone for your time, and that concludes the session for today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Mhm.